question of monopolies. Now, one of the reasons some people would say that, in the West and in some other countries, one of the ways that they have been able to check and ensure that customer service delivery is a lot better is, when competition sets in. But in some instances, what you find is that, there is a cartel. There is really no competition. The so-called competitors offer, the same kind of service, and you seem to be stuck between Peter and Paul. How is your agency, or do you come in there when you see that, things like this happen? Say, for instance, with flight tickets or, telecom services and things of the sort, where the problem seems to be the same.
Well, the one thing that's apparent is that competition policy and law is actually a tool of consumer protection. Now, in Nigeria today, we do not have competition legislation. However, the way the consumer protection law stands still prohibits unscrupulous practices and exploitation. Now, it's not linear. It's not that simple. So for the smart lawyers, they're going to seek to hold up the Consumer Protection Council from regulating the space you've just mentioned. But I agree with you that an appropriate competition regime is going to be vital to the choices that consumers have. And yes, there's been some discussion, there's been some advancement, and we're hopeful that at some point that would become the case with legislation. Cartels all over the world actually is criminal. And what it is that competitors should not be able to get together to even discuss pricing at all. Because once you do that, there are two things that are affected. One, the quality that consumers get, whether they pay a fair price for what they get. And it eliminates choices. And then once pricing isn't fair, then of course consumers are at the short end of the stick.
So what can you do to check that?
Well, one of the things we do is we go a roundabout way. Wherever you have competition legislation, it's pretty direct. Everybody knows what the deal is. But with the current position of the legislation in Nigeria, so we're going to start out saying that, all right, is this an unscrupulous practice or not? What is the injury? What is the outcome? Is it truly injuring consumers? So instead of working directly, we're going to try and circle it and come back to the issue. It's very tedious. It's tedious, it's difficult, it's time-taking, and it saps resources. But that's the state of play.
I want to ask you quickly, DJ, about the state of institutional collaboration, because I know you delve into a lot of sectors. If we talk about aviation, you're looking at whether consumers are getting value for money in terms of flight security, etc., with the NCAA. In the power sector, you're dealing with some of these issues as well, metering and some of the unfair charges that have come out. Can you talk a little bit about, kind of the state of effectiveness or ineffectiveness in terms of cooperation between your council and some of these other agencies you need to work with?
Oh yeah, the vast majority of our work, at least internally, is this cooperations and partnerships with other regulators. Because the way it is, almost every sector has a regulator. And their core function as a regulator is regulating that sector. But there's usually a spur or a piece of their work in that sector to also protect consumers in the sector. And so we're working with them every time because they understand that industry very much, and they can provide balance. So for instance, if you're looking at the aviation sector, I remember recently we were pursuing the question of cancellations and delays, but the regulator in that industry was saying, well, you know what, let's tell you what some of the problems are. There's road construction going on, getting fuel from the depot in Apapa to the airport. It's quite a problem. The pipelines that would have brought the Jet A1 fuel right to the tarmac have been broken, and so we have to exercise some understanding. So we are working with all the regulators, and one of the things, in fact, one of the first things I started out doing when I started work there last year was to take a new look at the existing memoranda of understanding with the different sectors and expanding them. And so without question, I would say that the collaboration that I've experienced in the period that I've been there has been inspiring. I've been meeting periodically with the Director General of the Standards Organization of Nigeria, and constant communication with the Director General of NAFDAC, and that is the case with some of the other regulators also.
When we think of the CPC, oftentimes, Nigerians are aware that it exists, but you don't often hear a lot of noise. You don't often hear a lot in terms of this is what we're doing, et cetera, et cetera. What would you tell Nigerians about, some of the things you've been able to do in terms of checking these practices? Other than just kind of the general functions that we already know about.
Well, the one thing is that first we've got to recognize that the most CPCS's best effectiveness is not in how many complaints you resolve. It's really in modifying the marketplace to the point where it's actually fairer. And so a lot of that is happening.
I think the Nigerians, will hold the rights on that one, because isn't it about consumer rights? I mean, it shouldn't be about their complaints.
Well, it is.
The consumer is also talking to you.
But you know that the rights are not necessarily, it's not exclusively a question of complaints and resolution. I mean, if we can diminish the complaints at all, we've done far more work than resolving complaints. And I would think that diminishing complaints is far more important than resolving the complaints.
No, but how much of that is a function of Nigerians not necessarily being aware of the mechanism by which they can access the CPC in some of these issues? Because some people say,
from a complaint resolution standpoint, that is correct. But I thought the point you were making is that apart from the regular complaint resolution, how else do we do our work, and how would Nigerians know? And there's, the whole consumer protection space is two things. There's prevention, and then there's remedial. So complaint resolution is remedial. And there's a prevention aspect, and that is holding companies accountable. Most companies, I mean, where there is no consequence for anything, you do anything. So just engaging companies. I'll give you an example. Towards the end of last year, there was a beverage company, and they had an ad up, and that advert seemed to convey alcohol as a potentially healthy lifestyle. And I don't have a problem with people who choose to consume alcohol, but portraying it as a healthy lifestyle is just inappropriate. And so what we did was to engage them. So it wasn't that someone complained at all. I'm constantly meeting with associations, trade associations, and directors. For instance, today I am meeting with the senior and top management of online marketing companies. Yeah,
I think you just hit the nail on the head now, because I was just about to come to that. The theme of this year's Consumer Protection Day is making digital market spaces fairer, and we've seen a proliferation right now of e-companies, especially those that sell to consumers online. Now, what are you doing to ensure that the rights of those people who buy from these online stores are protected?
Well, two things. First, we're in the process of promulgating regulations. The regulations would address repairs, return, replacement policies, and then the general warranties and guarantees. And we would insist, based on the regulation, on how consumers must be treated, and then the return windows, how the returns would occur, going through customs when they are buying things and all of that.
Presently, there is nothing in that regard, is there?
No, there is no e-commerce regulations. There's currently no e-commerce regulations. As a matter of fact, that's one of the first observations I made when I started last year, that two things we need to do. We need to get a proper warranties and guarantees regulations in place, and we need to regulate e-commerce.
Have you been receiving complaints from e-commerce customers?
Oh yes, we are. Now there's a traditional rubric. I mean, the traditional rubric of consumer protection would still cover. It's just that business is far more dynamic, and technology and innovation is far more disruptive. And so the general rubric is just inadequate, and that's why we now need to move. For instance, I'll give you an example. So if you're buying something from Amazon, and you're here in Abuja, so jurisdictional questions arise, and that is the case all over the world. So now we need to write regulations to make sure that we can subject whoever you're purchasing from, so long as they're selling to consumers here, to the jurisdiction of the authority, and that's the direction we're headed.
What can consumers look forward to in the next year? I mean, we have, from now to next year to celebrate the next Consumers Protection Day. What should we be looking forward to?
Number one, with respect to the theme for this year, which is making the digital marketplace fairer, I'm hoping that, looking forward to working with the online marketers to adopt certain principles of how their business will be done, so consumers can look forward to at least some clarity in how the process would work and how their grievances will be addressed. Number two is that in the coming weeks, we're looking to launch our own comprehensive consumer complaint resolution mechanism and portal. So there would be a lot more channels for people to complain, and there will be a technology around it now. And number three, looking forward to making sure that companies, whether they're providing services or manufacturing goods, themselves create their own dedicated consumer or customer service approach, and they make it accessible and let people understand how to complain when there's a problem with their products.
It's a fine place to leave it. We have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily. Babatunde Irukera is the Director General of the Consumer Protection Council.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this program are those of the maker and do not necessarily reflect the ins and endorsement of Channels Television.